Wish you were one of those influencers with raving fans who binge on your every word, consume all your content, buy everything you have to sell, and demand even more? Then stay tuned while Authority Magazine columnist and BuzzFeed contributor Tracy Hazzard shares strategies, tips, and tactics from top videocasters, podcasters, authors, and social influencers on creating that bingeable factor. Now, let's join Tracy as she explores how to rise above all the digital noise with the Binge Factor.
Hey everyone, welcome to Feed Your Brand Center of Influence. And we are shifting to the Binge Factor. That's going to be our new name going forward. And I'm very excited to bring that to you because that's really what we've been trying to get at all along with these interviews with top podcasters is what's making their shows grow? What's causing more and more listeners to engage? How is that happening? And most often we find it's the factor that they build in. It's that strategy. It's the tactics. It's the things that they're doing that create that binge factor for them. So it's something we're going to highlight moving forward. And we're going to talk about their bingeability factor, what they think it is, and then what I think it is. Because as I'm looking and interviewing so many different podcasters, and as we manage over 300 here at Monetize, it's gotten me to start seeing a pattern of what's working and what's not working. And so I want to bring you more of that. So I'm really excited that this is going to be one of the first episodes that we're bringing you under the new branding of the Binge Factor. I'm bringing you an amazing podcaster who's been through a lot of time in the industry. She's put her time and her episodes in. She's getting to well over 1,300 episodes. And it's just amazing. She's been doing this for over a decade. So I've got Debbi Dachinger. She's a media personality and media visibility expert. She's been interviewed on over 1,000 media outlets, and she's a syndicated award-winning podcast host nominated for 2 People's Choice Podcast Awards. She interviews celebrities on the red carpet. She's been a keynote speaker, a certified coach, the author of 3 international best-selling books. She's a media visibility authority, which I talk about that all the time. And I love it because Debbi and I have just connected on a level of her advice and my advice. They're so similar. And I just love that. So I've been referring lots of people to her. Debbi coaches people on how to write a page-turner book, run a company that guarantees your book becomes an international bestseller, and teaches the ultimate visibility formula, how to be interviewed on radio and podcast shows in 60 days or less. She's in her 12th year, so well over a decade, of hosting the syndicated Dare to Dream podcast that started out first in radio. She has been a regular featured contributor to published magazines, awards and accolades, editors picked, featured intriguing creator broadcast industry lifetime. She's been in documentary films on the cover of magazines. I mean, she's really done it all. She's the Who's Who Hall of Fame for Entertainment, winner of successful achievements from Voices of Women Worldwide, and the recipient of the Heart and Spirit Award from the Evolutionary Business Council. I love the Dare to Dream podcast. It's really great. You all have to check that out, but we're going to talk about more about what makes Debbi Dachinger so bingeable. Debbi, I'm so glad we're talking again.
Tracy, me too. I want you to know I just came back from speaking in San Antonio, Texas. And while I was there, I was speaking. Somebody popped up right afterwards and said, I feel like there's somebody you have to meet. Do you know Tracy Hazzard?
Oh, that's so funny. It's such
As a matter of fact, I do. And she said, yeah, I just feel like you guys, you're right on the same page. You need to connect. I said, yeah, I think the universe thought the same thing. We are connected. So that was such amazing affirmation to me, confirmation that we had connected the way we did through somebody else yet again. And then just 2 weeks later, somebody else popped up and said the same thing. And now here we are in your show.
I love that when the universe is conspiring to help us, right?
Yeah, it's always conspiring for us. And I love that too, building influential relationships. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I think you win the award so far for the longest running podcast host with the most episodes that I've interviewed so far.
Oh, wow. I take it.
Yeah. Has it always been the same show or has it been a different show over time?
It has been the same show. And I'll tell you something in case people are listening who are interested in podcasts, just from being interested, or may want to start a podcast, that I would change probably the name of my show, because when I started, it was in radio. I was at a station in Burbank. I called it Dare to Dream because it was the right name for my show. It was what I was doing. I learned to create these really huge dreams. And I was very excited. I wanted to share it with other people. And I wanted to explore, besides sharing with the audience how to, I wanted to bring on people who were examples, were creating enormous dreams, like well-known names or maybe names people didn't know, but check out what they created and how they got there. So it was Dare to Dream. And I would say it's going to be 13 years in this June.
That's amazing because most people don't stick it out. So we're going to talk about, what's made you stick with it in a minute. But so it's been 13 years and you're at like 1,300 plus episodes?
I can't even keep count because the week when I start doing more than one show, it just exponentializes. But it's considerable. And I almost haven't missed a week, even if I had to pre-record while I was speaking or traveling or something. It's my baby. It's my meditation. It's my masterclass.
So you started first in radio. And is it still produced through the radio or do you now produce it independently?
Yeah, very good question. I am definitely independent. I syndicate. So as far as radio, I'm not in a physical station anymore. So everything goes out to like iHeart and Pandora, Spotify, BBS Radio, several others, Radio Public. And some of those are actually considered internet radio and some of them are radio. And then the rest of them are all on major podcast sites. And I watch my numbers. I try to keep my finger on the pulse, using chartable.com and other things to ascertain how's the show doing? Where is it reading? Where is their RSS feed for my show on some podcast site? And it's just flatlining, like nobody's really tuning in and it's not even worth it. So I just try to utilize my time and energy best I can. And I have a foot a little bit in both worlds still.
I like that. I think that's actually been a success factor I've seen with a couple of our clients and others who are shifting from podcasting more into radio. So it's going the other direction as well.
Technology, right? Everything is new again.
Now, is there anything that you learned from the radio days, though, that you still keep as a part of your show?
The most important thing for me when I did radio, I would say it's kind of funny and it's twofold. The most important thing really was connecting. So what I loved about being at a physical station is that people came to the station to be interviewed, occasionally on the phone, but most often they came. They loved to come because they could get their pictures taken there. We had a step and repeat. They loved being like with the cans. They loved having the intimacy with me. And I loved it too. I developed a lot of big relationships that way in the beginning years. What happened when I translated over to podcasts was I struggled for a while because I was on the telephone or Zoom or Skype, and I was trying to have to figure out how do I connect with this person? Like, feeling them and energy's everything. So I had to find a way, literally, to calm myself down and find a way to listen better, way better, right? Without using my eyes or my feelers. And so that was something. And I would say the other thing, and it's kind of funny, is I learned to dress up. What I mean by that is in my early years in the station and radio, I had someone from American Idol, one of the finalists, come on my show. And I used to dress like people who do voiceovers dress, which means your hair is in a ponytail and you look like terrible, right? You haven't really dressed up because you're not on camera. And so I walked out to meet this person in the lobby to be greeted with cameras in my face. And I mean, someone was filming a documentary about her and I was mortified. Never on, acted like, yeah, this is cool how I dress all the time. But inside I thought, note to self, we will never be surprised like this again. So I still today get dressed, whether I'm being interviewed or I'm interviewing somebody else. I just think it's good protocol because I don't know what's going to happen. And I'd rather dress for my career.
You know what? It's so funny because right before every interview, I have the habit of putting on lipstick. Even right now, I just did it before we do it and we're not recording video. And I still put my lipstick on. And there's two reasons for it. One is that it's like harks back to my cheerleading days where you had lipstick and you had it on because it forced you to smile because you didn't want to get it all over your teeth or anything like that. So you smile. So like it's kind of done that happiness factor, like kind of creating that energy that happens from having those like, and also because it makes me feel better, right? I feel better when I have that on. It makes me feel just a little bit more like I took the time. to take care of myself, right? So it's something I always do at the start of every interview. And my husband, who's my partner, always looks over at me and goes, they can't see you. Like, I can't tell you how many times he says it. And I always say, it's not for them. It's for me.
Oh, that's great. I have to say, I really concur. And I like that you got it as simple as lipstick, which is a great point. I have a friend who bought me this gorgeous red color MAC lipstick. I only wear nude color. I wouldn't have chosen it for myself, but I bring it when I travel. So for instance, when I just came back from the speaking gig, I had it with, and every so often I would put it on my lips, even if I wasn't on stage. I'm so glad because people were popping up saying, can I take a picture with you? You're already out there on Facebook and social media. And I've been seeing them going, that lipstick was the bomb.com. I am so glad I put it on because really made everything look good. I looked good in the pictures. So that's so simple, but it's a great technique. Use lipstick.
I love that. I love that. So now, have you found some success factors, some things that have really been changed for you switching from radio to podcasting that you just found was you just loved it, or it just created more success for you?
There was definitely a learning factor, and how for me to do what I did, I came from such huge numbers in radio. And anytime you start over again, whether you're a mom and pop shop and you switch locations, or like what I did, and even in podcast in the beginning, actually, I went to internet radio and I would be unhappy with where I was and I'd switch and then switch, and people find it difficult to follow you. So being stationary, I found, was very important, finding a place, a home where they can find you and follow you. And my skill set had to get better. I had to relearn how to create intimacy with my guest first, because the people I have on generally are very influential. I also had to throw out questions, right? So talking points, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, basically your guest will send you, here's 5 things I'd like you to ask me, which is great. What I do now with talking points is it lets me know where they want me to shine a spotlight, but I have curiosities, and I feel like I am, as a host, every man and every woman. And I feel like it's incumbent on me to ask the questions that people are really curious about. So sometimes it's personal, and oftentimes it's about factoids about their career that I really want to know, whether it's a how did you do that, or how does that work? Please break it down for me because I'm confused and you're the expert. So conversations, I think also I can have an idea of where I'm headed. But when I get with somebody on the show, conversation can go someplace completely different. I'm very open and fluid to all that. Those can be the best. And the other piece is, I think it's important to know where your sweet spot is. And what I mean by that is, some people translate through the pen. They translate through writing, through copywriting, through marketing, through headlines. They may be very clever with words. I would say they should be full steam ahead with that. Some people are just like comedic and great on the mic, very fast in the uptake. Then they should excel at that. What I have learned about myself over the years is that my sweet spot is on camera. So I started to do my show concurrently on camera. It changed my numbers. They've gone way up. And also, as important, my guests, because they see me, there is just something for me with that. I have started redeveloping really important relationships with people I want to be in relationship with out there who are doing huge work. And these people often will say, oh, when this is done, can we hang out? Can we talk a little bit? Oh, and sometimes they want to talk about what I do. They're curious. Can we collaborate? Which is awesome. And sometimes they say, you know, when I come to LA, can we hang out? I was just with David Wolf yesterday, right? The NutriBullet guy, the health and wellness expert. He's amazing. Like, I couldn't stop the conversation, right? An hour and 15 minutes in, the guy is dropping down some nutrition bombs I never heard before. And I couldn't stop the conversation. I didn't want to stop the conversation. We had such a great time. And when it's done, he's booking plans with me to go hiking in LA. So this is important. These are the needle movers, right? This is what everybody wants in their career. So what I'm saying is, when I found my sweet spot on camera, That's how I develop relationships with influencers. And that's who I want to be hanging with. We all up-level each other.
Right. Wow. And you definitely up-leveled, which is some of the things that I want to touch on right now is you've had a lot of success. Do you attribute this, because you're a high media visibility expert. You help, we talk on the show all about being seen, heard, and found, but you really do it to the nth degree for the people that you work with, for the people that you teach, for the people that you coach. All of that, you really work on this visibility thing. But have you found podcasting and radio, what you started with your radio show, to be a differentiator, to be something that made it a little bit easier to get that visibility?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. I have to say game changer, right? Very important for people to know this is work. A lot of people, you and I know about pod fade, right? 70 to 80% of shows go bye-bye because people go, oh, I started a podcast. This is work. It's work. But guess what? It's also, if you really love this, again, if it's in your wheelhouse, it's a game changer. It has opened doors over the 13 years I never anticipated and have been so pleasantly surprised. Collaboration, speaking on panels, speaking on stage, being asked to participate in books, actually developing careers that are akin to being on podcasts, such as being a book writing coach, such as having a company that takes authors to a guaranteed international bestseller, such as teaching people the ultimate visibility formula, how to be interviewed on radio and podcasts and get mad results. So now I have all these amazing clients that I work with. And really, if you had told me 13 and a half years ago, Deb, this is where you're going to end up. This is what life is going to look like. I would have said you are on crack.
I agree. I agree. Exactly the same thing. I mean, here I was a ghost designer, right? Like hidden behind the scenes, behind big names like Martha Stewart. And I never imagined people be like, oh yeah, we'd like to have you speak on our stage. Oh, there's going to be 1,000 to 2,000 people there. Like I never thought that was going to be me. It just wouldn't in my wildest dreams, but I started a podcast and all of a sudden that's what's happening to me.
How long have you been doing yours?
So I have 4 of my own. Of course, I have a company that has 300, but I have 4 of my own. And the oldest one is 5 years old.
That's awesome.
Yeah, actually it's almost 5.5. So in April, and we took a break on it and we're restarting it again because of demand. So you never know, you're going to go through those stages, right?
Yes. And to your point, when it comes to what you're going to talk about on your podcast, the subject matter is so important because what my understanding is from what you're saying and from my experience is what you talk about is why they invite you on stage and to be interviewed and to be, et cetera. As I shared with you before this started, I have a journalist, a Los Angeles, frankly, pretty well-known journalist who reached out to me and wrote me an email. I thought it was a scam. He said, I want to interview you. I found you. I think you're fascinating. I'm like, really? Yeah. So we're meeting tomorrow. And I said to him, how did you find me? And he says, oh, who knows how these things work? Of course, I looked him up and I made sure he was extremely legit. But I find it amazing with visibility, with podcasts, with what we do, that at a certain point, you don't have to work hard. People just find you.
They just find you, right? Or refer other people to you, as we were talking about earlier as well. So yeah, that is what I really do love about this is it has made something that was, and I'd been through, 25 years of career. We've hired a lot of media firms over the years, publicists for various things that we needed to do. I've had more success doing nothing but podcasting than I did by paying those firms before. And I'm shocked by it. I think it's more happenstance though. I could be more intentional about it and definitely work with someone like you to be intentional about it. In fact, I just did a coaching call with my clients about vetting someone to help you with your media. So whether it's a publicist or a media expert or other things, and I just did a whole thing about talking about someone. And my number one thing is that you're a podcast host. So work with someone who understands that.
Yeah. And I love that you're bringing this up because there's something I've been noticing. So you and I both get a ton of emails from people who say, have my client on your show. And generally they're well-known publicists. I've had relationship with certain publicists for years. So there's some of them, because I know them so well and the caliber of their guest or client, I do book them.
Right.
However, I've started to see a new trend I would love to address just a little bit.
Oh, please. I was hoping you were going to go there. So please.
What's happening is I'm receiving emails from people who are clearly not publicists, who have clearly hung a shingle out that said, I'll help you get booked on podcasts. Hire me. And I can tell because their skill set in presenting their client is less than stellar. They're very nice. They're very cordial emails, but they are nowhere near what I'm used to. And more importantly, they've never heard my show.
That's the number one thing right there. You just hit on it. They've never heard your show. It would happen to me all the time in my column. And I would get people and I'd be like, you obviously have never read my column, or you would know that I would never write about your pitch.
And a good publicist does their research. There is no way somebody is writing to me about stock exchange like they have, or emotional eating. Look, that's a beautiful thing, but it's not what Dare to Dream is about. And so it's frustrating. It really is. And these same people, by the way, will write to me 2 and 3 times. Did you get it? Did you get my email? I'm just writing back to make sure you got my email. So here's the frustration. I just had a conversation with somebody you know because you recommended this gentleman to me to work with me, actually. And I had this exact conversation with him. And I was saying, be careful, because there's a lot of people out there saying, just pay me like $50, $100, a booking, and I'll get blah, 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 blah. But they're not bookings that are going to move the needle. They may not be aligned with the person's message. They may not have an active, engaged audience. Like, there's a lot of tenets to what makes an interview successful and a podcast successful. And I think you have to have a heightened awareness these days. Everybody's looking this as a cash cow, right?
That's why I sent them to you. So just for all of you listening out there, I get people who do guest placement services, right? All the time, who come to me, and I don't refer people to them. I don't. But I referred this person to you because he had a wrong idea, and I thought you would set him right. He had a wrong idea of what it meant to be going and guesting on shows. He had the numbers, the vanity metric. It was his idea. I just want to go on shows that have 1 million downloads or more.
Yeah.
Be like, it's not going to get you what you want. So get your mindset reset by Debbi, because she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah. And if I may, just to that point, so I have a lot of friends in the podcasting world. Thank God, because if you did this alone, you just would not have the finger on the pulse of all of what's possible and the amazing things people create. So grateful for that. One of my friends has a show about rebuilding old cars. He only has about 300 listeners, followers right now. But let me tell you, he announces something about a car and everybody buys in. That's right. Statistics. So you can't look at, they have to have 100,000 downloads and I need solid evidence. And it doesn't translate in this world. It's a different setup. You have to really look at the show someone's running, the engagement, how narrow the path and niche is. All of this is very important. How long they've been around too. They have a little staying power. They've built up somewhat of an audience and an actively engaged audience. That is your audience.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what you and I go for. Engagement and conversion. All of that matters the most, and audience match is high. So let's actually touch on our 5 tips, because that's the first one. What are some lessons and stories from your experience on booking great guests? Some of the best ways to book great guests.
Okay. I'm relentless. I just have to tell you that I have cojones when it comes to that. If I'm fascinated by somebody, I'm going for it, right? I don't care what quote unquote name they have. If I really want to have a conversation with them, I will. I mean, I'll Google them. I'll try to find information. Now, people are very savvy these days, and often the people you really want in your wish list will not have an available email. So next step, I go their name, press media. I will often, not always, but often I will find somebody, let's say press@oprahwinfrey.com for the heck of it. I'm just making that up. But, you will find press and media, or someone's name at the actual publicist, and then I'll write directly to them. Here's what I do. I don't just write and say, I want this person on my show. I let them know why me, why my show, Here's the conversation I have on Dare to Dream. Here's the depth. Here is how many listeners I have. I can tell you it's very hard for us on syndicated podcast / radio to really follow numbers. But I know that I have at least 175,000 people who listen. Awesome. I can deliver that information. Here are the sites where you can find my show should you want to listen. Also, here's my website if you want to check me out. Here are past guests who have come on so you understand you are fully aligned with that conversation. And then here's what I deliver. I don't just ask you to come on the show, but it has an afterlife. And this is what it looks like. My repurposing, the way that I market the show, how many people will be engaged and so forth. So I'm really giving them very concisely, by the way, because they don't want to read a tome.
Yes, they don't. They want it quick.
They want it, in and out, but so that they can in a gaze. First of all, they get that I'm professional. They really understand why I'm coming to them. Sometimes I need a warm introduction. Sometimes I'll say, Tracy, can you introduce me to XYZ? Because I really want this person and I want to make sure I get their attention.
Well, that's actually a really great tip right there because you're networked with as you said, the podcast community. If they've been on another person's show, that's usually the easiest reach.
I also don't believe what people say. Bad press. I do press media for a very big expo here in LA. And this guy who runs it wanted me to book somebody else. I had her on previously. There were reasons why I didn't want to redo the show. He said, oh, dump this other guest. Actually, a huge name. Dump him. He's boring. Wow, dude. You may not realize it, but your stock just went down in my eyes. And I'm going to honor the interview I have with this gentleman because that's what I do. And actually, I have to say he was not boring at all. Point of view. So I don't listen to other people's bad press.
That's good. That's really good. Love that. So what are some of the best ways you found to increase listeners? Because it's a little bit harder on the podcast side than it was on the radio side. Yeah.
I think you have to have a great headline. You have to captivate people. Why that show? Like there's 760,000 podcasts right now. How are you going to be heard, right? In that level of noise. So I think you have to have a great headline. I think you have to have some great bullet points, something just like any marketing that's going to cause somebody to want to listen. What did that person deliver in the show that is so incredible? Or what do you know you're going to be discussing that everybody's going to want to tune in? I think pictures are fantastic, right? So you have to have not just a picture of your guest, not a headshot. I think that's boring. But I think if you have an action shot of you, even if somebody photoshops you and the guest, or some kind of action shot, let's say you're on camera of you and the guest, that's really captivating. I've noticed the weirder the pictures I post, the more I get people who click on and listen. And I use hashtags. So I'm really big on hashtags. And that's also caused my numbers to go way up.
That's great. I love that. So now that you're not at the radio, how are you producing this in a professional way?
Good question. I don't know that I have much to offer here. I have a great meme, right? I have a great meme. I have great people I work with at the outlets that I'm on that I really trust. And most of what I do is through who I know, like relationships, everything. And then the rest of it is I have to have the mindset. I can't just hop on like a minute before an interview. I have to decompress a little bit. Because it's important to me how I show up on my show. People feel it when I'm off. And I don't want to deliver shows like that. I also, try to keep it simple, try to keep it to the time as much as possible. And when I have an experience like yesterday with David Wolf, where it's just like beyond a mundo, it is. It's my show. So if I want to go on for an hour and a half with him and he does too, that's what we're going to do.
I love that freedom too. I agree with you.
I have also quick turnaround. And I think that's very unique in this business. Some people can take months and months before they get your show out. I actually do it within a couple of days. And then it's off of my to-do list and people are remembering me. I'm hot off the press. So when it's followed up by here's the links to your show, they rather love it. And I find most of them will cross promote.
I love that. We see a trend towards that. Some people are booking way, way, way out and their shows are not doing as well with the promotional side, like somebody sharing their show, because the energy of that's lost than the ones who are doing it within 1 to 2 weeks.
I book far out. I do, because I get too many requests. So I'm easily 3 to 6 months out, and they know, because of how everything's automated, what they need to get to me. They usually send it in. I have a special folder for that. It's easy. However, starting about the week before, my engagement with them begins. And that relationship carries through until the actual interview and then thereafter. So I think it's sort of a sacred time, that 1 to 2 week spot right before they come on for both of us. And it does create good things.
I love that. That's great. Now, you have an audience. You get 175,000 listeners. How are you encouraging engagement with them? Where do they engage with you?
Oh, gosh. I always say this on every show. First of all, I say they subscribe. So this comes right in your inbox. Second of all, leave a 5-star review. And I know that's very pedestrian these days, but I believe strongly that when people write about what they love and listen to, somebody else who comes along and says, I don't know if I like this show, but they read something that's organic from somebody else, this testimonial, they'll feel like, yeah, actually, I want to tune in. It's important. I feel like the conversation I have is important and it warrants that. The other thing is, I tell people on podcasts, if you want to see us, then go to youtube.com/Debbi Dachinger, because it's a blast to see me and the guest in person.
Right. And there's a lot of commenting that goes on YouTube.
And I write to people. I do my best. Of course, it can be a little much sometimes, but when I can, I write back to people. And I got to say, thank God, because I know being anonymous, people can be a little cray-cray out there in media, but I get really intelligent comments to my guests and the show. And I just got one the other day. I think it was a man responding to Allison Armstrong, the relationship expert. And he wrote this huge paragraph from a man's perspective. And I am going back in there and writing to him because he was so kind to take that time. It's meaningful. And I also say, last piece, Patreon. I do use patreon.com, which is a great place for podcasters if you want donations. And you can give things away to people who give you money. So, I try to make it a little fun. And I use sponsorship too.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You have ads on your show. What are some of the best ways you found to monetize it? What was the key factor to being able to take those advertisers?
For me, again, it's relationship. It really is. I did an in-person interview with somebody 6 or 7 years ago. He's a co-founder of Access Consciousness. He's my sponsor. I'll say it out loud. Yeah. And his name is Dr. Dane here. He's magnificent. And we actually created a product together. And we were together in a studio doing the voiceover for the product. He was walking out. He came back in and he looked at me and said, hey, you do amazing work. How do I advertise on your show? I said, oh, easy peasy. I could give you the specs right now, or I could just email it to you. Yeah. Email it to me and my team. I did. That month, he started advertising and sponsoring, and he has to this day paid me every single month, these many years, to do so. Wow. So that's one thing, and it's big, right?
Yeah. I find that that's the case, that you've hit on that the ones that are out there either seeking it, like they're purposeful about it, or that it happens to them, which is kind of how it happened to us as well. That it happens to them because there's just synergy with the relationship that you built and the serving that you've done to those that maybe have been on your show, or products and services that are related to the audience for your show, that it just comes naturally.
I've been getting emails lately about product placement type inquiries from people who are representing companies and clients. I actually want to explore that because I don't fully understand how they want to work, but I know they want to pay me money to have some of their clients' products on. So one thing I know is nobody can put something on that I haven't tried out first and I know is fantastic. So I'm going to explore those emails and find out, how does it work? What is the payment like? Will I get to explore a little bit what they have so I can vet it? And I don't know, that could be really fun. I listened to somebody recently who is a publicist who also has a foot in the Amazon world. He wrote so many reviews on Amazon that they recognized him, reached out to him and said, hey, we'd like you to do some product endorsement. We'll send you the product and you write a real, honest review of it. And he's been doing this. He gets some bang up swag, this guy. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I might want to see if I can translate that to my show without it overwhelming the show, obviously. But, in some kind of a drip method, that could be fun too.
Well, yeah. And I hear from so many people who do it that the podcast conversion and video cast conversion is so much higher than all other media types. So when it's a right fit for you, you've tested out products, you've done these things, you've built the relationships and you're excited about it, it comes across and people buy.
Yeah, exactly. You got to steer them right.
I don't want to end at all without doing two things. Number one is we like to explore the binge factor. What do you believe is your bingeability factor for your show?
That's such a great question. I really feel it's a combination of heart and quirk.
Heart and quirk. I love that. That's a really good way to describe your show. It is. So sometimes people, when I ask them this question, they don't have an answer for it because it's really hard to look at your show and look at yourself and think about it as being bingeable. But I think that there's two bingeability factors for you. There's two binge factors. What you just said, the heart and quirk, your personality is that. That's what comes across. But the second part is it's the people you pick. It's the conversations that you're having. You're very focused. So I know I'm going to get a true either success factors, tips, pitfalls. I'm going to get all kinds of conversations around transformation in my life. From the people that you're talking about. Some of them were great at it. Some of them failed at it. But I always know it's going to surround that no matter which episode I listen to. And you do that really well. And I think that's the focus because if I'm in that transition point in my life, that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear more of. That's what will make me binge it.
I deeply appreciate that. I really do. This has been a huge year for me of receiving feedback from people who have been guests who have said, look, I've done this many shows in TV and radio, but I got to say yours stood out. What you do is different and how you ask and how you connect. And, I had this big aha. I was listening to somebody being interviewed about meditating and I loved his point of view. And he was like, you don't have to sit down for 20 minutes. It can be walking. You can find your meditation in many places. And I had this big light bulb go off and I realized that's what my show is for me. Every week for at least an hour, I sit down with somebody in a meditation. Nothing else exists. I'm not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. It is just me and that person, mano y mano, and I am in bliss, just learning. So I humbly thank you for that feedback and receive it because it's very meaningful. I think I have exquisite people on the show. I learn a ton, and it seems that for other people too, they get a lot of lessons, tips, hacks, and encouragement.
Well, it's so interesting because what I've realized as I've been doing this with identifying people's binge factors, which is actually the new name of the show. So we're shifting it to the binge factor.
That's great.
And yeah, it'll happen I don't know if it'll happen for your episode, but it'll happen right after that, I think. But as it happens, I started thinking about this because actually one of the shows that I was listening to is Noah St. John, who I know, he's a friend of mine. We've been on a lot of stages together. And I was listening to, as I was going through your show and doing my research, he was talking about the unconscious things that people do. This may very well be that for you because this is so meditative for you. And because you're much in that unconscious state of being able to move that energy, you don't realize you're doing it. And so it's harder to identify for yourself.
Yeah, I think like with all things we do it because we love it.
Yep.
And it may take many years for there to be some distance between us and what the gifts we've been putting out in the world for little pieces to start coming into place and saying, oh, this is why I show up and do what I do. This is what I receive. Why am I still here in this space? There's a lot of times I could have walked away from this for various reasons, including once I was with a radio station that burned down in the California fires.
Oh.
What was I going to do? And every time I came back to the same thing, I do this because I receive so much. Like I cannot imagine not doing this. And then there is the visibility factor. That would change too much. Doing a podcast has changed my life. I'm not extracting myself from that. Way too many bennies, right? All the way around from the heart factor to the career factor to the visibility. It works.
I love that. Well, I like to end with some advice that you have for people who are thinking about podcasting. And you've touched on this a few times, so I really hope you'll go into greater detail, is that it's not for everyone. Yeah. So would you touch on some advice for those that are to be able to understand whether or not it's right for them?
Yeah, happily. Sure. Everybody has a place where they're phenomenal. Let me give you an example. Seth Godin right? Blogger. Amazing. He once said with clarity, I'm not on Twitter. You're not going to see me on Twitter. When asked why, he said, why would I try to create 140 characters when all it does is take me away from what I love, what I'm known for, and where my people are? It's blogging. It's writing. And I think there's a lot of message in that. So for entrepreneurs today, there's this splat, right? Like pasta on the wall. Oh, okay, I need a funnel. I need to write a book. I need to be a bestseller. I need to be a podcaster. I need to be on YouTube. And we could go on ad infinitum. And if you're doing that, my darlings, you're not having a career. You have no capacity, I promise you. But if you find your narrow lane, you can do amazing. Find what you love and where you are loved, because there's really extreme feedback with people. You'll know immediately if you're being received or not. I think it's super important to do what you love. I also think if you don't know what people want, and it's so important to know, like, am I resonating out there? Or if you have followers, but you feel somewhat out of touch, ask, what is it you want and need? What are your problems? What are your challenges? What are you loving right now? What do you want to see more of here? If you have a show, get feedback. It's great to interact. Find fun ways to do what you do because it's work, right? Make sure that you're really showing up. I don't care if you do contests or if you have like funny tip of the day, or I've done all sorts of things. And I learned a long time ago, like I said, I have cojones. When I was first starting, I reached out to Oprah Winfrey's producer, True. I also reached out to the gentleman, a billionaire who started Westwood One, True. And I just said, I was like a baby in the industry. I said, hi, here's my show. Will you listen and give me feedback? And they were awesome, these men. They did. They really listened and they really gave me feedback. And they said, one of the points I took was, there's not enough of you, Debbi. You're so busy featuring somebody else. Who are you? Because that's who the audience wants.
Is that why you added that beginning to your show where you talk maybe 10 minutes or less, but you have a little bit of sort of your thoughts for the day?
I always have me in the beginning, and that's exactly why. Yep. And then I learned at times, not often, but at times, much like you've done in the interview, you have to interject you. You've got to have a personality people connect with. So when you share things, Tracy, here, people are resonating with that. They're liking that. And the second piece I learned was at the end of the show, who's coming up? Why should I tune in again? You want to give them bait, but it's positive bait. So I get to say to somebody, great, James Redfield is coming up, Russell Brand is coming up on the show, etc. I want to let them know this is why you subscribe and keep tuning in. So it's a start to finish package.
I love that. Oh, Debbi, I'm so glad you came on the show. So glad we were able to expose the audience to your success tips. And there's so much more that they can find on your website, which we'll have the links for in the show notes for this blog post at feedyourbrand.co. But Dare to Dream is available everywhere. There isn't a player I couldn't find it on. So that's a wonderful way for you to connect, understand some more about what Debbi does, and then go straight to her website because she's got some amazing media visibility tools that you need, because every one of you aspiring podcasters out there need to work hard to be seen, heard, and found. Debbi, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing with our audience today.
This has been great. Thanks, Tracy, very much.
I so enjoyed my conversation with Debbi today, and I hope you did too. I mean, it's just amazing how she's been able to sustain the energy for her show, to keep it going, to keep herself going, to live in that excitement of the next interview and the curiosity of what am I going to learn? What am I going to teach? How is this going to move forward? And I love the structure of her show. It's one of the reasons that I think it's really bingeable. And here's something that I've been getting out from a lot of advice from listeners as I've been talking to them as well out there. Some of us want to learn something when we're listening to a podcast. We want to learn about media visibility techniques in this particular case with Debbi's show. And we want to just cut to the chase. We want to get the lesson. And Debbi brings that right at the beginning. She gives you the setup for why you should listen. She gives you the setup for why it's important. She gives you somewhat of her viewpoint and her lesson first. And then she goes into the interview. It gives you an ability as a listener to be really efficient with your time and choosing the episodes that are going to be right for you, but it also gives you the ability to understand and frame up what you're listening to so that you're listening for the right things, so that you're listening for the things that you can learn the most from and you don't miss them because she's helped frame that up. So she's assisting her listener in the educational process, in the learning process, and the getting the nuggets out of her show. So that's one of the reasons that I think that that's one of the binge factors I think she has in her show. And it's also one of the reasons why I think you have to take a listen. You got to check out her show. So the Dare to Dream podcast and connections to Debbi Dachinger will be in the blog post for this episode at feedyourbrand.co, because the binge factor is still located on Feed Your Brand. Don't worry about that. You'll still be able to find it. You'll still also be able to find all the other Feed Your Brand episodes as well, on the how-tos on how to podcast, on the new techniques and the tactics that we're applying there, and our more lesson-driven episodes. So you'll be able to find all of that on feedyourbrand.co. If you have anyone who belongs on the show, who needs to have their binge factor analyzed, who you believe are such a bingeable show, you've got to suggest them up to me. You can reach out to me on social media at Feed Your Brand, or you can find Tracy Hazzard with 2 Z's anywhere on social media. I look forward to bringing you the next Binge Factor. Thanks again for listening, everyone. I'll be back next time with a new bingeable podcast host.
You've been listening to the Binge Factor podcast. For more information on podcasting and videocasting success tips and tactics, please go to thebingefactor.com. And be sure to listen to our other show for podcasters called Feed Your Brand. If you'd like to be interviewed on this show, as well as featured in Tracy's column, please go to thebingefactor.com/guest and apply.